You know those moments when you're watching what is billed as a family-friendly movie, and then you see something which scares the absolute and utter piss out of you, looking at you, the child catcher in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Sometimes you just get a big nasty shock, and you really wish there had been a bit more warning. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture, and here are 10 terrifying monsters in non-horror movies. Number 10. The Rancor. Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. The Star Wars series explores the farthest reaches of the galaxy, and as such, it's home to an array of terrifying monsters. Still, the Rancor takes the cake for being the scariest among them. We're introduced to this beast in Return of the Jedi as Jabba the Hutt sends his victims into its pit, with nothing but screams afterwards. This immediately instills a sense of dread about what this creature looks like, which is answered after Luke, and an unlucky Gamorrean, gets thrown into it. The Rancor is revealed for the first time here, and it's bloody terrifying. The Rancor's design is nice and simple. It's a big monster with a powerful jaw, armoured skin and arms, meaning it can grab you and move around freely. The only way to stand a chance against it is if you're a Jedi. It's also brought to life with some delightful VFX from stop-motion master Phil Tippett. Number 9. The RHINO, James and the Giant Peach. Most people know that rhinos are herbivores, meaning the chances of getting eaten by one are about the same as being devoured by an ostrich. However, that didn't stop Roald Dahl from killing off James's parents in James and the Giant Peach with one. Naturally, when it came to adapting the book into a movie, the trauma inflicted on James from his parents being gobbled up by a hungry rhino had to be captured. So this rhino needed to be scary. No, what's scary than a regular rhinoceros? How about a giant rhinoceros running through the sky made of clouds? Yeah, that'll do it. This terrifying antagonist is shown frequently throughout the film, haunting James as it chases him and manifests his sorrow and fear. This metaphorical horror was certainly intense for a kids' film, with the terrifying shadowy design of the antagonist and the horrendous sound effects going some way in crafting a genuinely scary threat. Number 8. SHELOB, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is not short of creepy monsters. The orcs, Uruk-hai, Eye of Sauron, cave trolls, Gollum, and more fill the fantasy trilogy with characters you wouldn't want to meet down a dark alleyway. But one creature stands tall above the rest, the monstrous SHELOB. This giant spider appears in the third movie of the trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, having made her literary debut in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Two Towers. Viewers were given plenty of warning about her as Gollum lured Frodo into her domain, knowing he'd soon turn into spider food. But that didn't make her arrival any less terrifying. SHELOB isn't an over-the-top design like many other monsters in the series. Instead, she's simply a giant spider inspired by the New Zealand tunnel web spider. Her basic design is more than enough to terrify most of the audience, as her spindly legs, bloated body, and powerful pincers are frighteningly well achieved, with VFX that hold up to this day. Of all Sam and Frodo's trials and tribulations, this one might just be the scariest. Number 7. The SKEKSIS, The Dark Crystal. Jim Henson was an iconic puppeteer behind The Muppets, Fraggle Rock, Sesame Street, and more. But despite his wholesome legacy, he loved scaring the pants off of people during the 80s. The awful SKEKSIS from The Dark Crystal is perhaps the peak of this. The Dark Crystal is a fantasy film set in a world controlled by these terrifying monsters. They are designed to appear like an amalgamation of a predatory bird, reptile, and dragon, giving them their terrifying, vulture-like appearances. As if they aren't scary enough based on looks alone, these creatures also delight in malice. They are vile, repugnant beasts who sacrifice others for their vanity, sucking the life essence out of innocent creatures to make their bodies young again. Naturally, they're also brought to life with some of the most impressive puppetry seen in cinema, courtesy of the Jim Henson Company. The SKEKSIS make The Dark Crystal feel closer to a horror movie than a children's fantasy flick, which is what Jim Henson planned on. He once famously stated that he thought it was unhealthy for children to never be afraid. Yeah, well, he sorted that out with these villains. They also terrify in the Netflix series Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, so be sure to check it out if you like being spooked by puppets. Number 6. The RoboFlops, ROBOCOP 2. If you're a fan of biomechanical horror, then these unfortunate creatures are the ones for you. The RoboCop series is a beloved sci-fi action franchise that married satire with barbaric violence, creating a twisted yet often hilarious look at corporate greed, technology, and law and order. These monsters from the second movie encapsulate that wholeheartedly. The RoboFlops appear during a sequence showing OCP's attempts to create a new RoboCop outside of Alex Murphy. Sadly, these prototypes could not accept their new inhuman forms, leading to some terrifying imagery. Experiment 1, who is brought to life with a creepy face on screen, shoots everyone around him. But it's the second failed experiment that's really the freakiest. This one steps out of the lab and instantly tears its own head off due to the sheer horror of being alive. The scene is definitely played for laughs, but seeing cyborgs kill themselves is still going to do some serious eye damage. These monsters are brought to life again by some stellar VFX from the master himself, Phil Tippett. Number 5, the Basilisk, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Fantasy often goes hand in hand with terrifying monsters, as The Lord of the Rings has already demonstrated. But if massive spiders don't do it for you, sorry Shelob and Aragog, then Harry Potter's got you covered with an even bigger nightmare. The Basilisk appears in the Chamber of Secrets, where it battles the boy who lived. Its appearance almost makes you forget you're watching a fantasy movie about magical children, with Christopher Columbus's second Harry Potter film ramping up the horror exponentially. Who could blame kids for being terrified of this thing? It's one scary as hell giant snake. Its fangs are massive, its body is creepy, and it can petrify people with just a glance. Potter may have survived his battle with the Basilisk, but just because this slithery guy didn't take out the titular hero doesn't mean it has no blood in its hands, or technically scales. This dastardly beast was responsible for the death of Myrtle Warren, later known as Moaning Myrtle, as ordered by Tom Riddle. The Harry Potter films certainly have some spooky beasts, but nothing does it quite like this terror. Number 4, No Face, Spirited Away. Spirited Away, for many people, is an absolute comfort film. The beautiful animation, the escapist fantasy, and the gorgeous setting are a wall-to-wall delight. But it's not all soot sprites and talking animals. There are some nasty monsters in the spirit world, and No Face is among the freakiest. This spirit gets the nerves going right away, as his shadowy design mixed with the ominous mask he wears is unsettling, especially when almost everything else is over the top colourful. He even skulks around the bathhouse like a ghostly stalker, which doesn't help when his appearance is so creepy. His initial look only scratches the surface, as the character becomes even scarier once he loses control and gorges on anything he can get his hands on. He's got a massive monstrous mouth that comes out of his chest, and his body becomes bloated to the point of towering over the other characters. It's pure nightmare fuel. Of course, in the end, the monster gets to show off a much softer side, which has helped endear him in most fans' eyes. But before then, he's an absolute terror that might make some parents question whether this anime stuff is too scary for kids. Number 3, The Wheelers Return to Oz. What would a list of this be like without a little visit from the Wheelers? These infamous, detestable, terrifying monsters have been a source of millennial trauma since Return to Oz hit theaters in 1985. As such, they're a total shoo-in for the list. The Wheelers are a gang of strange monsters that taunt and torment Dorothy after she returns to the land of Oz. They act as psychotic henchmen to the witch Mombi, who works for the Gnome King. So, what's so scary about them? Well, where to start? The first creepy thing to note about them is their design. They wear animalistic masks with creepy smiles and outfits that look scrapped together. Then, of course, there are the damn wheels, which extend their legs unnaturally and help them roll about with intense speed. Sound also plays a big part of their fear factor, with the squeaking of their wheels enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Their demonic laughter also sounds like a pack of hyenas hunting their prey whilst giggling the whole time. Nothing about these monsters is pleasant, and they're only the tip of the iceberg for scary things in Return to Oz. Always remember to beware the Wheelers. Number 2, Cyborg VERA, Superman 3. Superman 3 is hardly the shining pinnacle of the DC hero's legacy. The flick was heavily criticised for its goofy tone and reliance on comedy. Still, while the movie has an overall campy feel, this one scene went above and beyond to strike fear. Towards the film's climax, a supercomputer has been built and goes haywire after gaining sentience. It thus drags the secondary antagonist Vera into its circuits and performs a monstrous transformation that turns her into a cyborg. The transformation scene is terrifying to watch. Mechanical parts connect to Vera's body with wires poised to look like veins. Vera is turned into an emotionless monster who attacks those around her with dead-eyed stares that peeks right into your soul. Is this Superman or Tetsuo the Iron Man? The VFX on the character have aged quite poorly, but if anything, this helps the unexpected horror. The dated visuals add an uncomfortable, uncanny aesthetic that makes it clear the monster is physically there. Number 1, Judge Doom, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This character will forever live in infamy for how much damage he did to the psyche of kids, and even some adults, in the late 80s. The movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a kids' noir comedy that has some risque moments, but is otherwise harmless. However, it has a villain who makes children everywhere scream in terror. Judge Doom is the judge of Toontown, and he's instantly freaky. His overly menacing costume and the eccentric performance from Christopher Lloyd hook you into his horror right away, and he even doubles down by straight up murdering innocent toons. However, it gets even worse. In the movie's climax, he's run over by a steamroller and seemingly killed. Problem solved, right? Well, no, as that's when it's revealed that he's a cartoon. He brings himself back from being flattened like a pancake and takes his true form. Doom has horrifying red eyes, a piercing high-pitched voice, and his ability to turn limbs into instruments, such as springs on his feet or a buzzsaw for a hand. He uses these to try and kill beloved hero Eddie Valiant, leading to a scene that traumatized most youngsters when they saw it for the first time. And probably the second as well. That is everything for our list today, folks. What did you think? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to let us know over on social media. Special thanks to Michael John Day for writing this article. You can catch that on whatculture.com. Don't forget to follow us at whatculturehorror on Twitter, and also you can follow myself at Sean Ferrick on the various socials as well. Until I see you again, make sure that when you sit down to watch a film with your kids, maybe read a review or two first. Look after yourselves. Thanks, folks.